Again, my name is Jeff Kamen. If anyone is unsure of how to do this, I put a little something in the chat. You can raise your virtual hand. I will call on you, and then I'll ask you to unmute yourself and then make a comment, ask a question. I'll have some questions, but we kind of go with the flow as the discussion wants to go. And really, it's the aspects of the book and the author that you guys are interested in talking about. So don't be afraid to bring up anything about the book, because there's probably somebody else that wants to talk about it or is thinking the same thing. Be the person to bring it up. So if you don't want to talk on the video for whatever reason, you can always use the chat. I myself am unable to completely keep up with both. So if there's something from the chat that you would love to hear addressed from everyone in the video, be the person to bring that up too. I appreciate anyone's help with that. But I'm ready to kick it off. I put a little something about the author, his bio in there. One of the questions from last night that was kind of funny was just why is Dennis in quotation marks? If you haven't looked at Amor Towles' website, it's really, really good. He's one of those authors that really takes care with each of his books to kind of create a world and then make it a really great experience, I feel, for the reader. He himself has a book club in Manhattan that they meet once a month at a restaurant and they talk about books. And I've often made fun of the publisher's book club questions that are published in the paperback version of a book later, because I said, I guarantee you, I've been doing this for 18 years. I read one of these out loud and it's like crickets in the room. That said, a lot of times the things I say, there's crickets in the room, but nothing stops a conversation dead faster than the publisher's suggested book club questions. But the ones for this one are on Amor Towles' website, and he and his Manhattan book club came up with them themselves. So they're kind of interesting. I might reference some of them tonight. If you haven't had a chance to look at his website, there's a lot of great stuff on there, including pictures of some of the postcards that are referenced in this book and so many other things. He is that rare author also for us that we have read 3 of his books all 3 of his novels. He worked in finance, as I put in the bio, for many years, and only quit that day job after the success of Rules of Civility. We were fortunate enough, and some of you were there, to meet with him in person at Bryant Lake Bowl on Rules of Civility. There are some videos of that I have that I can share. There's at least one short one on our YouTube channel. And then we talked about Gentleman in Moscow at Dual Citizen Brewery, and I remember he was directly answering questions. I was texting him and he was responding. We were trying to get a live thing going, but it didn't work with the tech that we had there at the brewery. And but he did answer a bunch of the questions later, and I think I sent them around to people or in the newsletter at the time. For this one, he's doing a tour. And he was at Talking Volumes in the fall. Maybe some of you were there. I was not, because it was my anniversary, and but I've listened to it. It sounded good. So feel free to pepper our conversation tonight with anything else that you know and feel about Amor Towles or his previous work too. So who wants to kick it off and stop me from talking? Who recently finished it and wants to tell us what they thought? Maybe tell us something, their favorite aspect of the book, or their favorite character, or what was the thing that hooked them and they knew that they liked it. Anyone want to raise their virtual hand and tell us that tonight? Let's see. I see Allie's hand is up. Allie.
I'm just going for it.
Go for it.
Also want to welcome my dear friend Helen is here. She's from Texas. She's joining the party. She's one of my favorite book nerds in the world.
Welcome.
So I'm thrilled she's here.
Welcome.
Yeah, so I loved it. One of the things I found most compelling about the story was how he kind of played with shape and structure, kind of like the numbering thing and the sections. And I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts about kind of how those were numbered. And not only did he kind of like play with that, he also like explicitly called it out in a couple of places of like the shapes of our stories, and kind of like it was kind of meta, like we're talking about the shape of the story in the story. And I really liked that. I liked Billy was trying to figure out where to begin in the story. And I thought that was a fun thing to follow. And when Abacus was talking about like the shape of life being like a diamond, the widening and contracting. I thought that was interesting, how he just like called out shapes for real, but in a really masterful, beautiful way, that kept me engaged. So part of me wanted to like kind of outline it or like hear him speak more about how he even started to structure it, because it was such a big book, but it really flew by for me.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. I really love the discussion of life being like a diamond structure. I was totally relating to it and thinking about where I am on the diamond myself at that point, and I thought that was pretty brilliant. And I even felt that evoked in a way. There's a Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald short story with diamond in the title, and I just felt like he had been compared early on to Fitzgerald with his first book, Rules of Civility, and he has actually written like a foreword for a collection of Fitzgerald stories, I think it was. So anyway, I thought it was a really another interesting connection. And yes, the countdown. So it's like the story is told in a reverse countdown of like the days, like we're at day 10, working down to the final day, and it really interesting how it does end with, at the exact same time he said he was able to figure out how to end it, at the exact same time that Gentleman in Moscow ends. Even though Gentleman in Moscow goes over 30 years and this is only over 10 days, he realized he was able to just tweak things enough that they would do that. And there are some other connections, the Wolcott, the Woolley, there's connections to the family that they're from is in his first book, Rules of Civility. But yeah, the numbering, really, really cool, fun, stylistic stuff. And I would love to hear what other people thought of the way it was structured. I mean, I thought at one point when he was talking about the way stories are made and how this, I mean, it was so interesting how it connected to Song of Achilles that we had just read, and how Achilles and Homer and Ulysses and so much were mentioned here also, that I almost envisioned it like when they met Abernathy, the author, that it was like either meeting the Wizard of Oz or like meeting Amor Towles himself, like you're meeting the author. And then I thought, wow, like what if we're going to find out that Billy wrote this story? And I don't know that I don't necessarily think that he did. And we talked about this in our discussion last night, but I do feel that we saw the birth of a writer there. He's someone who then will fill in those journals. And I do believe that Billy will chronicle many stories starting in the middle in media res. I see Donna has her hand up. Donna.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'll just speak now because what I love about this book club is that people have such interesting insights that I learn all kinds of new things to be thinking about with a book. And my reactions are pretty basic. I was surprised last night in the discussion how many people didn't like it, because I really enjoyed it way more than I thought I would, given the size of the book and the fact that it isn't really about the Lincoln Highway. I mean, Lincoln Highway is a key piece of it, but I found the storytelling pretty remarkable. And I'm a huge fan of road trips. And in fact, it was on a road trip to Cedar Rapids to see the Minnesota Twins affiliate there, the Cedar Rapids Colonels, when Byron Buxton played for them, that my husband and I realized that there was an article in the USA Today that was slipped under our hotel room door about the Lincoln Highway. And we looked on the map, we said, what's the Lincoln Highway? Oh, it goes right through Cedar Rapids. Whoa, who even knew there was such a thing? So of course, then we had to drive a piece of the Lincoln Highway. And it's kind of like driving Route 66, where there's really kind of rundown motels and businesses along it. But anyway, so I was really kind of excited about this book. I thought, oh, great, more about the Lincoln Highway. And then it turns out, of course, they go a whole different direction and so on. But I was very impressed with the way the characters reacted to each other, the fact that they were young people or on that cusp of adulthood, discovering what was most important to them, what they still had unfinished business to do in their lives. And I know with road trips, I tend to want them kind of organized, and maybe it's the point in my life when I'm reading this book and I thought, this is a really cool way to allow a road trip to happen, in the sense that things came up and the different chapters would end with something that was like the Odyssey. I mean, Jeff, you mentioned there were a lot of hearkenings back to some things about, other books and legends and so on. But the fact that they could do this really episodic journey and not be so thwarted, it was like, oh, okay, they stole my car, and okay, so we'll just hop a train and we'll get there. And it was kind of inspiring and totally charming, totally charming. I mean, I thought Amor Towles must have had so much fun writing this book because of all the little details about New York and about the flavor of life on the streets and about hopping trains and the life in those hobo camps. And it was just one scene after another, rich in descriptive details, atmosphere, opportunities for the characters to interact. And so I kind of wallowed in it. So I appreciated how it moved along just fine for me in spite of the length.
Thanks, Donna. I appreciate the fact that you listened in last night and then joined us tonight. And I appreciate your, and don't ever belittle your additions and your comments to the club, because many of us know that you take really good notes. And I often, I know I can count on you to come up with something. So thank you again for being the number one, because you participated last night and tonight. So although actually Carolyn was there in person and in video tonight. So you have someone is tying you for number one, at least this month. So who wants to be my rising star by raising their hand right now? And I will put I'll give you a gold star if you raise your hand and call on you. Carolyn, you're trying to.
Yeah, Sharon. I can't raise my hand. I don't know why. And so
Okay.
I was going to ask Lisa to raise hers, but I think I'll just barge in. So I'm actually here with my dad, Rob England, and he read the book and wanted to be a part
Wait
of
a minute. Is your dad Robert England from A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Oh my gosh.
He's just nicer than you'd think. So, and that's my mom, Sharon. She's not read the book yet. No, one of the things that we talked about last night that really struck me was the structure and how, it counted down from 10 down to the very beginning, as I think, was it Maura, did you say? And so that's where it actually began. I mean, so they had to count all the way down to Times Square to the very beginning, and then we don't know what's going to happen. But one thing I was thinking about last night was who is the main character, right? I mean, was it all four of the main characters, or was it one in particular? And part of me is wondering, was it Duchess now? Because I was thinking Emmett before, but now I'm wondering if it's Duchess, and his story had to end for the rest of the story, for Emmett and Billy's and Sally's story to begin. So that was a thought I had about that.
And Carolyn, do you remember? Yeah, last night you echoed that. I said that in the initial maybe third of the book or so, I was feeling like it became Duchess's story, and I really felt part of that was hearing it in his first person, and just really feeling that there was more to that character than maybe Emmett. Like I feel like at least I knew Duchess maybe better than I knew Emmett. Like Emmett wasn't as interesting in some ways to me. I mean, I did like all of the characters, and I kind of like what we came up with last night about, can you really take away any of those four, because it was like the four that were on the journey. But anyone else have thoughts on that, of who you would pick as the main character? But before you do, I see Rebecca had her hand up. So Rebecca.
Oh, I have thoughts on that as well.
Great.
I do think that this is a book that needed all four, and if it were just about one of them, it wouldn't have worked. I do think that Duchess, well, actually, I think Wooly was sacrificed for Billy. And the reason why I say that is we needed Billy's story to end up well, and it wasn't going to happen with Wooly being part of the gang. So I think that's why Wooly had to go. I was sad that Duchess ended up being the bad guy.
Yep.
Mostly because, but every time he started saying things about Billy, it was another nail in his coffin. You could tell that the author had made the decision that Duchess was going down. And so he had to give us reason to okay that. And that was, I think, the twist that he used. I wish I had a number of wish lists here. I wish we had met the mom. They will be okay without that, whether or not the mom is good or bad or whatever, or never is found, but I wish we had met her. I mean, I think that I would have loved to have seen another woman in the thing. And speaking of that, I think Sally deserved more of a story. She was so, I think, strong, and I don't know, she was on her own really cool journey. And this book failed the Bechdel test as a result of not having many female characters in it. I liked the reverse engineering of the chapters, because I knew the story was coming to an end. I wish we had gotten more of the Lincoln Highway, and I don't think he does sequels, so it's not as if there's going to be more fun time on the road trip, Donna, looking at all the sights, and Billy being precocious, and Emmett learning how to, I don't know, be a better person, or a calm person. Anyway, one last thought is the money that they got at the end, I can't help but feel that there's going to be some bad repercussions from that too. I'm glad that they have money, but it felt too easy. So those are all my thoughts at the moment.
Thank you, Rebecca. A couple of great points in there I would like to address. No sequels. Well, so far not. However, Towles has connected all of his books in some way. This one being more connected to his first Rules of Civility Woolley is a descendant. He's a family member of the Wolcott family, which is featured in that book. So I would not be completely surprised if we didn't at least hear or get a hint of something that happens with these boys later in life. We'll see. Towles has also been moving forward in time. He hasn't written anything in current times yet. He's written, so this 1954 is his most current setting, and maybe he'll do something, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, who knows, present day next. The $50,000 they get would be the equivalent of about $500,000 today. So it just put that in perspective for the budget there. It's interesting because someone could contest it. Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I will say that it was a bit of a shock to me, actually, what did happen to Duchess. I think it just didn't seem, I was like, oh, wow, he's actually gone. He actually died. And he's been questioned about that. People have kind of questioned the motivation for that. I could say a little bit about what Towles said about that, but I would love to hear what you guys think, if you were also shocked by that, or if that changed any of your feelings. But I have a couple of hands up already. So Lisa, talk to us.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hopefully I'm not echoing because Andrew's sitting over on that side of the room.
You sound good right now.
Okay. I think I can hear it now too. So you can turn yours on, Andrew, because I can't hear mine. Turn your volume on.
Andrew,
Sorry.
Go back to cheating on Wordle. We'll be fine.
Anyway, sorry about the tech.
Now it's echoing a little, whatever you did.
So I really liked the book. And just like his other two books that I read, I wanted to keep seeing what was going to happen to these characters. And when you get that involved in a book where you're like, I want to know what their story is going to be. Like, they're real people that have a real story and you really want to know what's going to happen. I think that's the sign of a great book. And that's my 5-star good read. Passing the book to someone else's, I was really just involved what was going on. He's a great storyteller. You want to know what's going to happen next. And that always leads to that same thing, that what is going to happen next? Will you keep writing? Because I want to know the end of the story for these people. And so I am shocked that people didn't like the book, because the story part of it is just so great. The only criticism I could think is that when I got to the end, I was unhappy with Wooly and Duchess dying and how that came about. But I think that the Duchess thing was an accident. I don't think that Emmett meant to kill him. That was his stall tactic, was to push him out into the water, knowing that it would take him forever to, like, he couldn't swim, so he would have to try and get the boat back, and not knowing he would end up dying from it because of the wind coming in and all that. So I appreciated that, because he had laid out a lot of that in the story. And he was very good throughout the book about foreshadowing everything, and it wasn't surprised when something happened. And I felt like every time someone came into the story, whoever they met along the way, it was that Odyssey part of the story where that you would meet people, you would get something from that interaction. You had to take it and grow from whatever you had. Not that, the pastor was so important or Ulysses was so important, but that the kids' interaction with them meant part of their story and where they were going. And so I just thought it was, just an amazing storytelling, and it went super fast. I was worried about the pages too. Like Donna, I picked it up. I was like, oh my God, we're never going to get this done in time. And I was reading it after Andrew, so I only had a week to read it, but it went by super fast just because it was so entertaining and such an easy read. So I gave it 5 stars, but I'm really interested in what people hated last night.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. And I love so much that you both, you and Andrew, read the books, and you're both in your place right now trying to make the tech work, and separate videos. Sometimes you share the video, and that you share the book. You take turns like that, because I've often talked about how my wife and I will share the AirPods and walk our dog and listen to the books together. So that way we don't have to worry about who's getting done with it first, because in fact I can't read ahead, because it's like, I have to wait, and we have to walk together. And Rebecca pointed out, echoing your sentiment about Duchess's end, that his greed was his downfall. And I just want to quote from what Towles has answered about this when people have kind of taken him to task on that. He says, as Billy is cleaning the library, Emmett has placed Duchess in the boat and set him adrift in order to buy himself some time. Noting the hole in the bow of the boat, Emmett has piled stones in the stern in order to keep the hole in the bow above the water line. As Duchess himself notes, all he needs to do is lean back and paddle slowly in order to make it safely to shore. But when the wind starts blowing Duchess's money away, he can't help himself and moves towards the bow with fateful repercussions. I suppose it's also worth noting that Duchess isn't angry with Emmett during the scene, because he recognizes the ingenuity of what Emmett has done and his own culpability in the final outcome. I thought it was, it's sad, because it's funny. I talked about this last night, about one of the things I liked about it, is that I didn't really see Duchess as that evil for a long time. Like, I didn't really get until maybe towards the end. Like, I actually found him pretty funny and comical and endearing. And I thought, like, when he, some of his moments of violence were like revenge. And I said last night that it's the 1950s and you're hitting someone with like a frying pan and it makes like a funny sound. And they even talked about it, and it seemed kind of slapsticky to me. But then when it was recounted that he was sought by the law because, he was assaulting people, it's like, well, yeah, he's breaking into people's houses and hitting them over the head and knocking them out, and stuff like that. I mean, that's not good. It read to me as funny in his voice, and in his first person telling of it, and even talking about, the satisfaction of it. But I also thought of, what they were coming from and the tough time of them. So I was on their side. But yes, ultimately, Duchess, his greed changes his character, makes his true character is, you know, that he wants the money more than anything, and he does things, other things too, that aren't good because of that. Maura has had her hand up for a while, so Maura, talk to us.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, I didn't see Duchess as a villain at all. I saw him as kind of a victim of his circumstances, because everything he was doing, he grew up with a theatrical father who turned him over to the police, in order to take money, in order to steal. And so what he was doing was just kind of how he was raised. And it was like, well, this is what my dad did this to me. And so this is how I exact revenge. This is what's important to me in life. And I think that the author did a great job at changing the voices, because I really picked that up. Like, Duchess wasn't a bad guy. He was a guy who had a terrible childhood, and that's how he viewed and interacted the world. And like, I found it endearing, and I found Wooly endearing in a totally different way, and Billy endearing in a totally different way, and Emmett very boring, because I think he was meant to be boring as a ploy of like, you think it's about him, but really it's about all the other characters he encounters.
Thanks, Maura. Appreciate that. And yeah, that's a really good point about that chapter on his childhood and the way his dad just, you know, sold him out like that. And just, it was, I really did feel for him at that point. So I'm glad that I'm not the only one that, you know, I felt maybe by the end that I was like, oh, this whole time have I been liking, you know, a bad guy or someone. And ultimately, you know, I liked that the final showdown with him wasn't, you know, it wasn't that evil or violent, and it was more of like, you know, we're just gonna everyone, and you know, they gave him his share of it too, which was nice. Unfortunately, you know, that's what he wanted more than anything, and it was his downfall. But Linda's had her hand up for a while. Linda Hoffman, you excited? Can you feel it? I saw you look really excited. Talk to us.
Oh, no. Okay. I had sort of a love-hate relationship with the book. I love Amor Towles. I love the way he can, you know, write beautiful, beautiful passages. And my main issue with the book that got me on the other side was I ended up skimming sections that it was like, I don't really care to hear Duchess blah, 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 blah on again. I thought he's not saying anything I'm real interested in. He's just going to yada, da, 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 tell another little story that I'm finding less than charming, because early on my sort of, I'm not a mom, but I had, you know, we all have an instinct to protect innocent and vulnerable people. And he isn't as vulnerable as the other people in the story. He's much more of a manipulator, user, opportunist. And I was looking out for the others, like, ew, there goes your money, there goes your car. Good luck surviving with this guy in your picture, you know. So I wasn't as sympathetic to Duchess, although I do understand, you know, that a person's background is good for something. And I think one of the interesting parts of this is that he was in the orphanage, so was, or not the orphanage, the reform school, and so was Emmett and some others. And his was such a much more severe introduction to life that he was just off into a more on the moral spectrum, so to speak. He was at way one end, and what was okay from his perspective was just so not even on the radar for a lot of those folks. And like, I can't remember the guy in Harlem who told Emmett, you need to get away from him and stay away from him, you know, if you're going to be okay, because he knew that guy was going to be trouble. But anyway, so love Amor Towles, love the way he writes, other than this book could have been about 100 pages shorter. In my view, there were sections that I thought, you're droning on. And if you were in the room with me talking like that, I would be yawning and like, you know, okay, time out. That's enough. So that's probably enough for me. So that's my 2 cents worth anyway, before people start.
Thanks, Linda. Well, we heard from last night some people that didn't like it, that said they skimmed some of it too, and that they felt it maybe could have used a little more plot and a little less. I don't know. They weren't as interested in certain characters. So I appreciate your opinion, and it sounds like you would at least give Amor Towles another chance, and that you like his stuff. So next up we have Amelia. I'm not sure or Amelie, but your kitty. I have to ask now that I see in the chat, is your kitty named after the character from Metroid, from the Nintendo game?
Absolutely, she is. Yep.
Wow. Come on. Can I get points for that? That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
go.
It is quite frequently when people see her name or hear it initially, they think it should be Seamus. Like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, we're not Seamus. We are Sam.
And are you Amelie?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Well, Amelie, Seamus would be better than what my nephew, who is named Seamus, was once called Sea Mouse. So it'd be better to be called Seamus as Samus. Yeah. But anyway, there's a new version of Metroid that's out right now for Nintendo Switch called Metroid Dread. I have friends that are super into it, so I don't know if you're playing that or not, but you might want to check it out. I heard it's hard.
I have not checked it out yet, but
all right, but tell us what you have about this book.
yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I have not read anything by Amor Towles before, but have had Gentlemen in Moscow on my list for quite a while. It just happened to start here, but I feel and echo some of the things in terms of how others felt about the characters. In terms of Emmett, even though we started with him, he really, for me, just felt like the connecting point to the other three that really were the more engaging and interesting people to follow and hear their stories and really see their development and how their various situations and environments transformed them even in the short course of the 10 days. Duchess, I think I saw somebody in the chat mention too that he was the only one who ended up at the reform work camp, whatever it happened to be, who didn't actually commit a crime or injure anybody or do anything to get himself there. But the outcome for him, he ended up coming out of it justifying violence and really, coming to an eye for an eye kind of view on the world, where everybody else ended up, at a different place. And my take on the countdown of the chapters going from 10 down to 1, the moment that connected to that most strongly for me was when Emmett recalled Billy asking him that, before you ever choose to hit or punch or react in violence to somebody again, do me a favor and count down from 10 before you do it, and then see if you still want to take that action, which is an outrageously insightful thing for a small child to be telling his much older brother. But that was how I kind of counted down then with the chapters, was a counting down from 10 in terms of deciding how best to react to the situation. And yeah,
that's an excellent point. I love the connection there. I remember when we got to that section, just really feeling that was a cool thing. And Towles has said that when he was writing it, he had like the days just broken out by the days, and it wasn't working for him. And when he switched it to doing the countdown that way, that was a helpful tool that he used to see what part should still stay in the book and what was working, what really fit. And then he said there was no reason to rob the reader of experiencing that aspect of it. So he kept it in there and made it work that way. Yeah, that's really, really great point. Thanks for sharing. I see a bunch of hands now. I'm going to go to Susan because she hasn't spoken yet. Susan.
Hello.
Hi.
I love the book. I've loved all of his books. He just gets sucked into the storytelling in detail. I thought that Duchess I wondered about it. I didn't want to not like him, but he gave us every chance to think he was a bad person. But what I noticed early on was he was honest when he was relaying a story about the incident in town with Emmett and the other fellow. I was kind of egging him on about the fight. Later, when Duchess was asked about it, he pretty much rattled off that story fact by fact. And there was a couple other times in the book where he may be a survivor. He might have done some slapstick oriented violence, but he was honest. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And then I don't often find like those like errors in books. And I found a fact check error in it early on. And I think it's just because I'm a state fair lover. So they were talking about the county fair happening in October, first week in October. And they mentioned something about the book started in mid-June and that it would be 10 weeks before the fair. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So I had to get out the calendar and look. And no, it wasn't right. It 10 weeks from mid-June would put you more where our state fair is, end of August, first part of September. So I don't know if I should email Amor Towles. So when the paperback comes out, they can fix that little fact. But
you could, and he has said that these things happen, and that when possible, he makes the changes for the paperback version. And I know another mistake that's in here that he's admitted to is the description of the goalpost on fire. And he said someone has told him that in 1954, the goalposts were not the Y shape that he describes. They were like a wide H, the old school goalpost. And he's like, well, he's like, that's just showing that I was never much of an athlete, and I didn't know. But yes, that he found out that person was right, and he'll see if he can, when possible, he tries to make those corrections, and he owns up to them. He's not a huge researcher, even though he does some, but he does make those mistakes. So yeah, I mean, send him a note. He might, if he hasn't heard it before, he might appreciate that.
Yeah.
Or you'll just add it to the list of, I better get this changed. Or or someone else is going to be like, you know what, I'm a state fair enthusiast and I just can't read Amor Towles anymore because he doesn't know when they happen. I mean, leave it to someone from, someone in Minnesota to really get someone for the county fair, the state fair aspect of it. Because I mean, Minnesota knows how to do the state fair. Am I right?
Yeah.
So thanks, Susan. I have to laugh because I don't want to be too negative, but I had to think of you. And someone last night who really did not like the book listed this as only like as bad as John Irving's A Hotel New Hampshire, and that this was my second strike, and that if we get one more book, they're gonna leave. And I said, listeners, viewers, please help me find that third book, and you can take this person's spot. I'm like, what could it be? What book that I like that could get someone to stop reading? What's that one?
Conroy might do it.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, I came up with it later. We got off on a real tangent, but I proposed the idea of Tommy Lee's autobiography from Motley Crue, because there's a chapter where he has a conversation with his penis. So I thought, hey, maybe, and I only found that out because of the show. But John Golden is loving it. He knows. He's had those conversations before. I just see I love seeing all the faces. All right, so some hands have been up for a while. We don't want to talk too much about Tommy Lee and his penis, but Helen, maybe you have something. But if you have something about that, feel free. You can talk about whatever. Helen, talk to us.
Well, if it would surprise anyone, I actually don't have any thoughts on that topic. But I just want to thank Allie for introducing me to all of you and getting to read this book. Someone mentioned earlier, was first of all very surprised that it had little to do with the Lincoln Highway itself. And I think that was like the first surprise of many. And I think, you know, as we're all avid readers, for me, it was just so refreshing to quite literally have no idea what was coming next. And if you're, you know, if you're better at predicting than I am, I'm very, you know, I would be very impressed. But it was so lovely to just not know what was coming up. And I think the Professor Abernathy was my favorite one, that they're going up the elevator. And I'm so angry at Duchess for, you know, just doing this to Billy, that he's going to get up there and have his heart broken. And we all know, like, he was also going to plan to like leave him there. So I was already mad, but then also just that he was so hopeful. And then when he opens the door, like, that was probably, it was like meeting Father Christmas and all of the good things. And just, I think that for me was like probably the number one that sticks in my head, of just being so surprised, thinking something was going to happen and the complete opposite ended up taking place. And I also love the question that came up earlier of like, who is the main character, and having to sit with that. And I also think that's really refreshing, of when you read a book, like, you don't know right away. And it can be frustrating too, but I think I just was totally open to the book. And I don't know about how anyone else was reading it, but I was reading on my Kindle. So as you go through the table of contents, you know, I saw it once, but then the characters didn't mean anything to me yet. So then totally didn't know whose chapter was going to be coming up when. And I think that was really nice, because then you got like, well, you know, the creep Pastor John, but then you also had like Ulysses, and so I really liked having people come in. Sally, I agree, like, I would have loved to have more chapters, but it was nice, like, oh, here's Sally. And like, so it was also lovely to have so many people to hear from, and some that even came up just once or twice. And I am just loving having read this book, and excited to hear more.
Thanks, Helen. Great to have you, and really appreciate your comments. And yes, one of the things that was interesting was how you could be surprised about who was going to speak next, and how those juxtapose each other. I especially think of when we had the sort of the hitting each other on the head with the shovel aspects, and how quickly those chapters were cut off, and then who was talking next. I was thrown when all of a sudden we had another, because it felt like we didn't have a new character for a while, and then we get that the traveling pastor on the train, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this guy. Like, you know, how long is this guy gonna be around for? I loved the Abernathy and Ulysses, and one of the things I would love to see him write about is what happens next for them. I would love for Ulysses to be reunited with his wife and his child, and have Abernathy and Ulysses adventures. I thought that was so cool. I had mentioned that, yeah, the Abernathy character reminded me of, like, you know, meeting the author himself. I mean, in some ways, it was so cool that it worked out that way. So thanks, and thanks for being here all the way from Texas. Rebecca and Donna, I see you both. Rebecca, you had your hand up first. Go for it.
Yeah, great points. I really love the side stories, in some ways better than the main story. Agree that Abernathy and Ulysses, I mean, the whole Ulysses arc was wonderful. Emmett was never spoke first person, so he was always third person, and for me that settled him as the hero archetype. You know, in other words, the one that people talked about, but he wasn't telling his own story, and that may have, you know, you could argue one way or the other about whether that makes him the main character or actually not. Was it Abacus? Was that the other character, Abacus, the one that the other black male? I thought he did a really good job of writing black male characters. I can't speak from any kind of authority, but I felt like he did it right. At least, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, the other thing that I think Amor Towles does is he likes to make us readers a little uncomfortable. We don't know whether something is going to turn out bad. It's almost like you're walking on ice that might break. And, you know, oh, are things going to go bad for Billy when the creepy minister pastor comes in, or you know, how bad is this going to go? And I think in the end, he let the ice break. He let, you know, Duchess drown. He did not hold that particular punch back. And back on Duchess, I did think you guys came up with some really good reasons why he was a character to care about, because I never found him like a whiny character. Yeah, can you see behind me is one of the postcards that Amor Towles sent out. I like that Duchess didn't try to blame other people, even though he started to whine about Billy. But anyway, I oftentimes I will forgive a lot as long as the characters or the evildoers are own their evil doing. I know if it's funny. I don't like people who are what is it when you say don't do this and then they do this. Anyway. That's all my thoughts for now.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I wanted to highlight the awesome background that you have there from the postcard. He did get a bunch of these postcards that inspired. You know, he decided to get actual postcards from there you go, and some of them had writing on them. Like he bought these online, he found them, and they had they had other interesting stories. So some of them were blank, and a lot of them actually had writing on them. I think these are on his website too, if you guys want to see some of them. But Donna, to you now.
Oh, and I'll just mention that the pictures on those postcards are now, I mean, add a lot of wear and tear and run down looks to them, but that's like those old fashioned motor court motels. That's what still are along the Lincoln Highway. But I was going to say something about Emmett. You know, I really appreciate Helen and others talking about that, reflecting on, his role in the story. And what I really liked at the beginning was how Emmett had such a definite purpose. And his father, what a really upright, moral, thoughtful man his father was. And granted, he failed as a farmer, but he certainly instilled in his son some important qualities. And he gave his son the freedom to choose his own path in life. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. And the fact that when Emmett did get out and he, went and very bravely into town and kind of stood up to the brother of the guy that of course was the one he had killed. But he had gotten that training as a carpenter, and he had this whole vision of his future, how he was going to buy these houses and fix them up and then, sell them. And he was going to do it. He did his research about population growth in California. Well, first he wasn't thinking California, but then when Billy says, oh no, we're going to go to California because look, and then, oh yeah, big population growth in California. So he and Billy kind of together had this idea, about going out to, well, then of course it all gets thrown, the wrench in the works with the two guys in the trunk. So, but that still guided Emmett this whole time. I mean, even going along with the adventure to get the money and all that. Yeah, he kind of had to come around and see that to have $50,000 really would be a start more than he would been able to do otherwise just on his own with the little bit of money he had. And so I just felt like the end was just perfect because now Billy gets to go the whole Lincoln Highway like he wanted to do. And Emmett was ready to set off on his life adventure now, whether they find their mother or not. And I thought, I agree with whoever said earlier, it would have been nice to meet her. Maybe Rebecca, was it you that said it would have been nice to met the mother? But I think, again, she was like this out there goal kind of a thing. And so Emmett maybe, yeah, wasn't, I mean, the other characters are in and out and so on and affected him, but without that central purpose, he wouldn't have persisted, I think. I mean, he had to get his car and he had to, all these things that kept him going along the way. And yes, there were surprises. You never knew. And some of it was really crazy coincidence to end up in the right place at the right time. But even without an internet and Googling, they could find the sister's address, or they could find, and all end up in the same place and all find, the house out in the Adirondacks. And it was entertaining as heck. But finally at the end, to see now they're positioned to start their journey that they were going to start in chapter 1.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so much there. Just very good. I got a fresh hand that I'm really excited about. Is the performing duo of Robert Radke and Tony Ninja Magic. They were going to do some of their favorite Motley Crue songs tonight. If you guys had any requests, you guys want to tell us what you're going to play?
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no Motley Crue.
Yeah, sorry, no Motley Crue in our repertoire. We'll hit some Whitesnake a little bit later, though.
Right.
Okay. We were talking about how I felt like it had kind of a Tom Sawyer feel to it, where Billy gets this crazy idea and they're just like, let's do it. And you're right from the beginning, you're like, this is an awful idea. This is going to go very badly. And then it totally comes off the rails, and then it becomes this giant journey. And then I kind of realized, oh, this is the throwback to the Greek story that they're talking about, foreshadowing Cloud Cuckoo Land. But and in as far as who's the main character, I was just saying, well, Billy's the main character because he's the kid with the vision. He's got the heart behind the mission. And my friend Robert here just told me that, well, yeah, he's also the narrator, because the book starts out with, where do you start the story? Do you start it in the middle? Do you start it at the beginning? Yeah, I think and let's just get down to did I like the book? Yes. Did I like it as much as Gentleman in Moscow? No, but I did like it. Good book. Nice job, Maura.
Great. And yes, I think we will see. I haven't read it yet, but glad you mentioned Cloud Cuckoo Land. I didn't intentionally make this the pick to follow Song of Achilles, knowing how much it would reference Achilles, but I think I had a feeling that Cloud Cuckoo Land might in some way connect to Song of Achilles from what little I know about it. But it'll be interesting to look at those three in a row then. Robert, do you have anything else that you want to say about Billy being the narrator? Because we mentioned that earlier, that is he? I don't know that he is, but he could be, and he certainly is. I think like what I said is he's going to be a writer, and he's going to keep writing, and then so are we thinking that he actually wrote this story? You want to say more about that?
Well, I thought when he was talking about where does Emmett's story begin, that really made me feel like his perspective was what was really driving the structure of the story. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I really liked about it was using, I don't know if there are any other characters that were first person other than Duchess.
Sally.
Was Sally first person? Okay.
Yep.
Because I know, like, I thought that Emmett was, from the beginning, was the main character, and I thought Duchess was just, he was the evil guy. He just kept fucking everything up. And had they not voiced him in the first person, I don't think I would have ever thought of him as a sympathetic character. But that really made him real to me, and it worked really well, I thought.
Yeah, and when asked about that, Towles has said that both Emmett or Sally and Duchess presented themselves to him as in that fashion, and he kept it that way. Like when he just was like channeling that character and hearing what they were saying, they were talking about themselves in the first person. So yeah, he went with that. And I think it's interesting to see how that affects the story and the way it's being told. And I think it did. It affected me in that way too, and made me feel. I mean, I wanted more from Sally. I do kind of feel like Sally was like, off to make preserves or jams or whatever.
Short change.
And I did want more from her. I was actually really worried at some point, we said it didn't pass the Bechdel test, but that I was like, is there not going to be a single female character in this book? Because she doesn't show up for a while. I was like, oh boy, what did I pick? And I'm looking around the room and it's like, 75% women in the book club. And I'm like, hey, I hope you guys like going on the Lincoln Highway with us. It's just me and Tom Sawyer here. It's going to be great. But, we'll get Becky later. We'll pick her up too. But anyway, so is Sally the Becky of to the Tom Sawyer here?
Wow.
But yeah, she maybe doesn't get to do as much, but who knows? Again, maybe we will see more from her or for her later. But at least the female character does get to be in the first person, if that's anything. But too bad she didn't get to speak to another female, I guess. Andrew, last time you made me laugh so much. Can you make me laugh again?
I don't know if I can make you laugh, but I'll try, I guess. So really enjoyed everyone's comments, and I really enjoyed the book. I was surprised. I didn't enjoy Gentleman in Moscow nearly as much, and probably would not have picked up another Amor Towles book unless you had called it for book club. So I'm really glad you did. I found it just a smooth read. Like I did not rush it. I did not feel pressured to get it done. I was just enjoying it kind of all the way through. And I'll point out a few things that really, came out to me. And one was that I did notice the lack of female characters in this, but I think it was primarily because it was centered around these three guys plus Billy, who had been in this crucible of being in prison, basically. It made me think about Nickel Boys. Actually, when I thought about the lack of female characters, I thought to myself, did the Nickel Boys have any female characters? Or did we get angry about that or not? Anyway, it was. I think that the story itself was really positioned around the camaraderie and the problems that these guys brought to this place and out of this place and everything that ended up after that. The Duchess character was fabulous. I mean, and I don't really look at characters as whether or not I like them or not, but boy, was he compelling. And, I have met people that you want to stay away from in your life, but you have trouble staying away from them. And it's really hard to explain those kind of people to people that are outside of the experience itself. And one of the reasons I think Duchess was so great as a first person narrator is that Towles was able to give you the feeling of why you're not giving up on this guy. Like, why doesn't Emmett give up on this guy? Because we're not giving up on this guy. It's like he keeps doing stuff that drives you bonkers, but he's so charismatic and he just draws you in. Another thing, some people, so one thing that would normally tick me off about a book like this was kind of these off the cuff stories that Duchess primarily told, but they were so well done and they had such meaning to the book. So I was thinking about the clown that comes to America as a huge success and then fails and ends up committing suicide, the magician that cooks his own bird, that guy, and then the Santa who ends up, taking his downfall because he impersonates a communist, and these sorts of things. Those stories were just so well told. I almost didn't want them to end, and typically I would have hated those diversions. But the thing that blew my mind about Duchess that Towles strung together throughout the novel was, and I'm surprised no one mentioned it. I mean, the big reveal was he was illiterate. And if you go back and you look at some of those things, I mean, he's signaling it all the way through. I think the one when he gets the jars of jam, when Sally drops them off, he says something, the preserves. Says something to the effect of, I'm no scholar, but I know my name when I see it, these types of things. So he was hinting all over this book. and to be someone like I can't even imagine what it would be like to be someone like Duchess with all this kind of obvious intelligence and skills and things like that, and not be able to interact in the world of reading. I mean, it's almost unfathomable that could happen. So I think that he was probably a sociopath, but you know, he just, a lot of sociopaths are people that we can't hardly resist if they're in our life. And you know, I just thought that he did a fabulous job. And finally, I'll just say that I thought that I loved it. And I know that a lot of people don't love this about books. I loved it that Towles knew what we wanted, and he didn't go there because it didn't matter for the story that he was trying to tell. So everybody wants to know what happened to the mom, but what happened to the mom, the most important thing is that nobody knows what happened to the mom. That was what was important in this story. What was important to Billy, what was important to Emmett, was that they had no idea what happened to their mother. And that informed both of their characters in these astonishingly different ways. And at the end, the big, like, he didn't stick the landing with Duchess, but he stuck the landing with Billy and Emmett. Emmett finally releases. He's finally not so driven by all of the bad things that have happened to him and his need to succeed, and he can go back to Times Square and he can experience Times Square. Billy, on the other hand, has lost his innocence. You know, the driving innocence of this book, he realizes at the end, you know, that, you know, Duchess is real bad news and Wooly is dead. You know, this kind of, and you know, the pivot that they do at the very end, I just thought was masterful. Just really, really well done book. But over and over and over again, there's all of this stuff that happens to these guys. And the reality is these guys don't know what is happening. They don't know the answers to the questions. Towles knows we want to know, but he won't let us have it so that we experience what those characters are experiencing. That's my interpretation anyway.
That's great, Andrew. It didn't make me laugh at all, but it was really good. No, I love it. Really, really nice way of putting that. And you did bring up, there were so many of those stories that Duchess told that you're right, that that might have been what turned some people off when they talk about skimming it or they didn't want to hear about it. But I was invested in them also. A book it reminded me of a bit from our not too long ago was The Cold Millions by Jess Walter. There's two brothers in that book, and it's set, you know, in the past a bit. I don't know if you guys remember The Cold Millions, but there was a little bit of a feeling of that for me. Another good one that the story of with some brothers at its core too. What are your takeaways? What do you think Towles was trying to say, or what? Even if you don't know what he was trying to say, what did you get from reading this? Is there any final thoughts that you want to have, or anything that was not brought up yet that you would like to hear discussed? Feel free to bring that up. I'd also like to remind everybody, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr is our March book. Last night, we echoed a previous question I had asked with who are some of the top American authors at the top of their game right now. I think we were talking about this at the start of the year, and I believe it was Pete who was like, you know, I put Amor Towles on that list now for sure, 3 for 3 with this one. And a lot of people have mentioned Anthony Doerr on that list also with All the Light We Cannot See and Cloud Cuckoo Land. I have not started Cloud Cuckoo Land yet, but I'm really excited to find out. Most of the time I am reading along with everybody at the same time. So I might be only a month ahead or so, but I have not read All the Light We Cannot See, and I'm going to try to squeeze that one in also. I just finished White Noise. I was talking about that last night. Worst audiobook reader ever. Made me go back to the paperback. Anyone else have anything that they want to say about Amor Towles' The Lincoln Highway? If not, I also have a newsletter we send out once a month, and it'll keep you up to date on all of our picks. We're scheduled through May. We are meeting in person at Urban Growler Brewery, and then continuing to do video chats. We have our bookshop that supports books and bars, and you can see our picks and what we're thinking about doing for the rest of the year there as other ideas, and let me know which ones you guys want to do. Donna.
Oh, yeah, one last thing that we didn't talk about, but people did last night, and that is some people are really bothered by how he doesn't use quotation marks. He just uses those dashes, you know, when the speaker changes. And I don't know if it bothered any of you. It didn't bother me at all. And I find that more authors are doing it that way now. They just seem to feel like it gives a more natural flow to not have all those little marks everywhere. And I was interested to read in that interview you shared with us, Jeff, that he talked about that himself, or one of the articles I read talked about how he did that, use that technique in one of his earlier books and decided to do it again because he likes how you don't have to interrupt what somebody is saying. He gave the example like, she looked at, you know, or why are you talking to me like this? She asked as she put her hands in her lap, blah, 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 you know, and how there, if you'd use quotation marks and insert all these other little, he wanted the dialogue to carry the story and to have the total focus without all those other little asides and that get interrupted with all of that. So I thought that was interesting, but at first, it's a little confusing. I don't know if the rest of you found it that way, and nobody's complained about it. So I guess. Well,
Donna, yes, great point though, that, yeah, he did talk about this, how he did this in his first novel, and he felt that it resulted in exchanges with a sharper delivery and quicker pace. It seemed natural, and it's just a lot of authors are playing with that in the format though. I think we've read like Sally Rooney and others where, you know, it's just almost like, you know, you used to be able to just kind of like scan a page and see like a conversation or what was happening. But, you know, the authors are finding different ways of doing that now. Now, if you're doing it on an audiobook, you know, you don't even notice something like that, except for the fact that it's much more conversational. And if it is being, you know, read by someone with a good voice that is really emotional, then you don't have to have that. Like you said, the example he used, I knew your father well, you know, comma, he said soberly, back in the early days of the war, you know, that sort of a thing. So it seems to be a modern thing that, and it'd be interesting to note moving forward, because I feel like there have been a lot of books that we've read that have played with that stylistic format. But thank you for bringing that up. Well, guys, please read Cloud Cuckoo Land if you can, and come back and talk about it with us. It'd be great to see you. And thank you in advance for anyone that sees inclined to send a tip my way. I appreciate that. You can find us on all of the socials, and this video will be edited and put up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to share it with people that couldn't be here, they can use it for their book clubs or whatever moving forward. And last month's Instagram clip is available also. And for the last 2 years, almost all of our discussions are available on our YouTube. So please check them out. And thanks again for being here. Good night, guys.
I didn't really hear what everybody hated so much. Everybody was either.
I don't know. I have no idea.